felt too unnatural for a new player to get in there. So what did we do? We changed all the mappings of because we used an Xbox controller like this, we just changed it to all kinds of different buttons and saw which one felt the most like if you got your grandma in Nebraska to play it, which one of those did it actually feel right? And we would watch I would spend watching a playtest, and I would look at someone's hands, looking at how they were playing and how they were using that button in a way that felt natural. And by the way, I make the joke that I overanalyze, but in this case, I had to overanalyze because that was the type of game we were making. You're listening to Rules of Play, a game development podcast for anyone wanting industry insights, deep dives on games, and casual conversation.
We're going. The official go.
The skin, that's the official clapping sound.
You can just hear the sound of skin on skin, and that's
just
it.
Decapitation of your fingers. Go!
We've already started. I can see the wavelengths.
And that's how we got 2 million views.
That's how we do.
Can't wait to tell the story later on.
Daddy, why did you lose your fingers? Well, it's funny you should mention that, kids.
Awesome.
So normally we just amble about, like we said yesterday. So I guess we can just do
let's just jump in it.
We'll just jump in it.
Yeah, let's just go for it.
So anyway, we'll jump with the normal question. What has everyone been playing recently?
Oh, who is it? Well, as our guest, Willem, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm playing Tales of Arise and Kena at the moment.
Nice.
Like both games, Tales of Arise is it's a typical JRPG, but I think it's fast enough that it doesn't feel slowed down. JRPGs always have this intention where they deliberately are very grindy. This feels just about right. But it could be because of my computer, but it's still, design-wise, it seems like it's always been faster paced. But yeah, and Kena has been a surprise. Viscerally, it's probably the best-looking game of this year.
Yeah, it looks bloody amazing just from the trailers alone. But I'm dying to pick that up, but my backlog's getting gross. I'm trying to just calm down with getting new games at the minute.
You started that 50 games in a year thing. I don't know how many you're up to now.
I think I'm 14 through, so I've got
14?
About 3 and a bit months to smash out the rest of it. I need to add Deathloop to my finished pile now. And I've almost finished Sackboy finally, so I'm getting closer.
That's going to be a very big December for you.
Oh, it's going to be a busy. Bear in mind, there's pretty much as soon as Infinite launches as well. Praying that it's good. I'm just going to be just in multiplayer constantly as well. So that's just. Aren't you? I mean, I'm away pretty much all weekend, so I'm only going to have Sunday to play a bit. But I caught the last one, so it was good fun. What about you guys? Been playing out good?
Definitely, obviously.
Yeah, about to say mine's less interesting. It's just been Deathloop pretty much exclusively this week. I've just been playing a lot of that. I think I'm nearly there. I know what I have to do to finish it now.
No spoilers.
I'm trying to skirt.
So remember that scene where
whoa! I only just started.
And that's when George Bush arrived, and and I was shocked about that part of the story.
That was the craziest.
And when
thing
Twilight Sparkle rode in, that was such a special moment. I felt the game was saved at that time.
This is just a Gearbox game now. We're just saying Tiny Tina's Wonderland.
Yeah.
That's just what that game is going to be.
It's actually the prequel to My Little Pony. That's why there's no humans of My Little Pony. It's eradicating each other.
What about you, Tom? Have you been playing out?
I've recently finished The Artful Escape, which is the
yeah.
I heard about that.
And if you're into space opera style glam rock, then I cannot recommend this game enough.
Okay.
Oh my god!
Okay.
The soundtrack to it is incredible. It's quite rudimentary gameplay. It's just side scrolling and then a few choices, and then it's a rhythm game in the musical sections.
Right.
But the story and the environment set pieces had me completely compelled by it. So I would definitely recommend it to anyone.
Good stuff.
It is, and the writing in it is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
That's
Sick.
awesome. I wanted to pick it up. So that's good. You bring those topics up because that's what I look for in a game.
There you go. So I've sold one copy. There
you go.
Put me on the marketing team.
For every copy they sell, 1 cent goes to you. You know.
I'll be rich.
I remember looking at the trailer for that because it's on Game Pass, and I was like, "This is mad looking. It just looks like a big LSD trip play experience, but it looks very cool."
Yeah, the thing about it, I think I tweeted about it, but I said it has some of the best environmental set pieces I've seen in a while. In a game like that, like it's so grand. That's the best way to describe it. Anyway, I'll let you guys play it for yourself. It's fantastic.
Yeah, sick. Also, I realised that we've probably done this a bit back to front, Matt. I think we might have jumped the gun. So I guess we should probably have a bit of a formal introduction to our guests today. So we're joined by Willem Kranendonk, who is a talented level designer who's currently at Zynga Games, I believe, who's had quite the varied career so far, worked on a lot of different projects. And yeah, we're very excited to have him on today. And we're just going to kind of go through, similar to our first episode, and go through kind of origin stories of how he got into the industry, what made him want to be a game designer, level designer, and see where the conversation kind of takes us, really. So yeah, I don't know if you want to give yourself a brief introduction, Willem. So rather than me trying to butcher your experience, or I'm happy to go for it, but up to you.
I'm very flexible. With either way.
To take it away, if you want to kind of walk us through the kind of story so far, and then we can rewind and kind of go backwards.
All right. That was unintentionally a Texas reference.
It's very, very McConaughey.
I wasn't trying to be intentional there. I've been working in the industry since 2015. Started my career at a studio called Reverge, which was the studio that helped work on Skullgirls, and then after that, Way Forward working on Shantae, and then after that, Velen working on Knockout City. TikTok, Bark, which is a shoot 'em up that recently came out, and Amazon. I worked on a game there too, and now I'm here at Zynga in Austin, working on Star Wars Hunters, with the Boss Alien team in it's actually Boss Alien as well in Austin, but we have another division in Brighton, in the UK. So go England!
Big up the UK.
Get him, son! Go get him, son.
That was too good of an impression.
I watched way too many episodes of The Inbetweeners to not try and get that one. So
amazing.
So that's my career. I was born in San Francisco. To a Greek mother and a Dutch father, so there were a lot of jokes you can make about all three locations, and it's fine.
Is that official? We have your permission now.
You have my permission to do that. Go for it. I don't care.
That's class. So like something we like to do before was we were kind of talking about. Those kind of moments when you were kind of growing up that obviously we assume that you played games probably like us from a very young age, always had somewhat of like an affinity with them. But did you have like a moment when you were like, shit, like I want to make games, like I really want to get into this? Because we've all had those moments from different aspects of it. Like sometimes it was watching behind the scenes stuff with games or being, quite connected to a franchise. But yeah, did you have a similar thing kind of getting into that, or?
It was. I had a very odd childhood when it came to that because we lived in a lot of countries. I mean, I lived in 4 continents before I was 7, so I've seen a lot of shit in my time in that aspect. And we were a family that sort of lived to get along with each other as much as we can. So we did a lot of things outside of the house and didn't watch a lot of TV and all that. When we came to England and we were a bit more permanent at the time, it was a very different story, I would say. we had I wasn't allowed to have a game console until I was 10, which was only so that which I had to buy myself, which was a way that my dad would teach me about saving and the rewards you would get from saving money to get a console. But to properly answer your question, because I don't want to drag onto it too much, but essentially, I always loved building stuff. I always was big into Lego and everything, and I think after playing Bioshock, which I think a lot of us have played, I assume a lot of us have played. I know Jack has because we talked about it before. It was during a tough period of my life, and I didn't have many things to go by. Not I only had my racing aspirations and not my anything else, and I just loved building stuff. So went into Minecraft and was building. I recreated Rapture in Minecraft, and then after that, made an adventure map out of it. And I realized I really liked that. Like I really liked building stuff, even if it was for an existing universe, and having my own twist and trying to get it to a really fun place. And then, like, I just remember I was saying it yesterday. I was at a go-kart track. It was raining. It was horrible, cold weather. It was, not a very good year of my life. And I just remember I said, fuck this, like fuck racing. Like it was just too dangerous. It was too much money, too many playboys, too much, too many assholes that really got involved in this sport. And I was like, I think I really want to get into I really want to get into making video games, and that's how it happened. And there were a lot of obstacles, but I'm pretty grateful that Bioshock helped me to do that. So thank you, Ken.
I'm sure he's listening.
He's definitely listening.
He's always listening.
He's always listening.
Yeah.
That's.
I think that's. Oh, three of us tried to talk there. Sorry.
Someone other than me. I've talked a lot.
Matt, you go.
Me go. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that's super interesting. It was kind of a tangent, but it'd be interesting to see like the generation of people who, younger people who grew up with Minecraft as their first thing and how much that would inspire people. Because I know a lot of people, like you were saying, started on Lego and then moved to video games and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're having just completely immersive Lego in Minecraft, I imagine, is going to bring a lot of people into video games. And I just thought that was an interesting tangent.
No, I think it's great. I think like that's the generation. I mean, people can create the things that they want in Minecraft, albeit it's very bare bones. But that's, I think, what makes it so exciting about this next generation of game developers. I mean, I remember like I used to build a lot of crap in Blockland. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that game.
I have not heard of that.
No.
It was an interesting game. I would say this, but it was, like, I mean, like the next generation might even be Fortnite players on Sandbox, like creating their own games, and that's just so weird for me and so alien. But now it's like, well, I was the Lego generation, so I guess that was alien at the time too.
Well, even super interesting. Like the modders from like Quake and everything was a big part of the industry early on, with the programmers and everything. So
that's what I was going to say. It's like really cool to have someone on whose experience in getting into the industry is completely different to ours, because we sort of didn't really go down this sort of sandbox or modding route. And I know that's a big way into the industry. Is a lot of people go into, like, I know people who go into Creation Engine for Skyrim and Fallout and that, and then create loads of maps and things in there, which is a really interesting way of doing it. As well as, like you say, like the things like Fortnite and stuff like that. It's a really interesting way of like flexing those design muscles and actually getting into the industry by showing people, hey, look, I can make these really cool missions in here. Please let me make missions for you.
Yeah, like I completely agree with you, because like I remember I was talking to one of my best friends is a guy called Michael Herbster, and he's a legend in design. Like he was part of the Shovel Knight core design team, and I was telling him, like, how did you get into the industries? I was a QA. I worked at a GameStop, and we like that generation blows my mind even more, because it was like they didn't even have like modding or any of that. They just if the chance happened and there was coincidentally an opportunity to go work at a studio, then they could. I just like I really admire that old school generation of designers. But I think, we're really blessed that we have these opportunities. Although what's funny is I think this, like our current, I mean, you guys mentioned it, like, like it is funny how there aren't surprisingly a lot of modern level designers as much as they used to be. I think it's depleted. I think a lot of designers now are a bit more scared to go into that, and they just want to do easy blockouts in Unreal or something like that.
Do you think that's because of how accessible like things like UE4 is though now? Do you think because that's free and the level of support, it's so front and center, or like you can literally go on YouTube and be like UE4 blah 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 blah, and you'll get hits of how to do stuff, where modding, I'm not saying it was like intentionally gate kept, but it felt like to crack into modding on a game, it took like you had to know someone who was doing it for you to really get into it properly. So maybe it's something to do with that.
I would say, like, I think that you make a very good point. I think the accessibility is important. I also think that your average like designer, and there aren't average designers, but like if I had to say that there was an average designer, your average designer, like if they had a choice between going into Source SDK and going to Unreal, they go with Unreal. Why? Because it's 2021 technology versus Source, which is early 2000s technology. But I think, like, for me, like personally, I think that's also a mistake too, because in order to evolve our engine technology too, we do need to understand what is the limitations of engine tech in general. And Unreal doesn't have too many limitations at the moment.
No.
And I mean, maybe BSP still needs a little bit of work, but now we got a nitrate technology, nanite technology coming in, so rendering's not going to be an issue.
Have you seen the new the actual blocking out capabilities in UE5?
No,
I haven't. It's looking really
click and drag. So you set up a whole like content browser of your models and everything. It's like super high res, and you just spam it in.
But I mean, even the actual like evolution of like the kind of BSP and the kind of like, actual blocking out stuff, it feels closer to something like Hammer, or like, especially Hammer 2. Like it feels like you can really go out and be like, you can like build and like entire like houses and structures like properly. Like how not quite as you do it in like a 3D like software package, but fairly close to that now. And being able to do that in engine, that's just a designer's dream, right?
It's insane.
You're not hopping about. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be able to make white boxes with just full textured 4K textured assets. Just put it in.
Yeah,
it's great. And yeah, I mean, like, it's great regardless. Like, I think it's so cool that engines and editors are getting more and more advanced. I think it's impressive how that's evolving. But, like, I still think, like, we need to keep also to what a level designer is, which is making sure that we represent the gameplay through our levels and not the other way around. And that's my concern about the next generation of designers, and even some of the current ones, where it's like, we have to, our levels will sell our gameplay. It's the other way around. Like, the gameplay always sells, the levels have to make that either nicer or complemented. That's the key, and that's hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess we were kind of talking about our like journeys in the industry kind of there. So we all kind of went through the kind of like college and university route as well. Was that something that you did as well, or were you kind of completely different with that? Because I know that's quite common nowadays, speaking about that wasn't there for the kind of previous generations. I think ours was the one, like my college course was like one of the first ones in the kind of area that was, here's you can do game stuff at college level. Like, wait, what? All my friends have gone to sixth form to do like chemistry and stuff, and I'm sat there like, that sounds crap. I'm gonna go do games. So was that something that was like available to you, or?
So I would say, like, we had I lived in the Netherlands for a few years, and it's a very homogenistic society. A lot of folks think the same way, so everyone kind of does the same subject, and some people like to belittle other people because of that. It is semi-cultural, I would say. It's hard to explain that, but it doesn't really matter. Like, the point was like, there were design courses in the country. But like, the original plan for me was to go to the U.S. and go to another university. I won't say what that university was, just in case. But it was an expensive one, and I just realized, what was the point, like, spending all that money and putting yourself into 10 or 20 years worth of debt. for the sake of a 6-figure like bachelor's degree. So we had 2 options: one, to go to the UK, or 2, I can save even more money so that I can do my internship in the US, because that was the goal. My goal was to leave Holland, and I knew that was like basically my reasons for it. So I had to go to a course that allowed me to learn a lot in a very compact amount of time, and I found this university in the east of Holland that was very attractive, and I went there. It was a cheaper university, and but it wasn't necessarily mean it was bad. I mean, like, I learned a lot in a short amount of time. But Holland is not a predominant video game capital, and I felt that wouldn't be a factor in getting to my next stop of my career. As we all know, turns out that's like one of the biggest obstacles people who don't live in America, Japan, Canada, or China. Or the UK have to go through, but I didn't know that. So first year was a great year. Originally my plan was to be an animator, but I didn't like, and I wasn't very good at animation. And then it shifted to design, game design. It was I purely wanted to be a game designer. My goal was to be the next Ken Levine, so I thought, hey, I'll be a game designer. I guess, amazing. And I realized I like that. Yeah, right. And all the time, like, I've been like, we did like level design modules, and I always was very good at it. But I was like, I don't want to be a level designer. That's not even like, I didn't think there was a job for level design at the time, weirdly enough. So it took me until literally after I'd finished my job at WayForward to realize that is actually something I really enjoyed. That was very natural to me. And the rest is history, like it took a while to find my identity, but yeah, that's basically how I started my knowledge in design.
Yeah, that's interesting. Nice. Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say, with going into QA when you're at WayForward and then moving into level design, I mean, how was that moving from QA into design? Because I know a lot of people see that as like a pathway into design, especially.
It's exactly what I did, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's possibly the best. In my opinion, you learn maybe even more about production for a video game in QA, because you have to understand the quality of work you're outputting. To me, it saved my ass so many times. Like, everything in level design felt like a luxury, because in QA you had to call out almost everything. In some ways it sounds like a depressing job, but I think what we did at WayForward, which I loved enormously, was we had a team that gave you a lot of ownership for a certain like part of a game you were working on. So in my case at WayForward, they put me on the most difficult dev kits on the planet, which was the Nintendo Wii U dev kits for Shantae, and eventually
testing on them. Oh my
god! When you have to put like an SD, like even I, thank God I blanked it out actually out of my memory, but it was a horrible process. And you sit there for like 30 minutes and you're like, all right, maybe the build will work. No, it turns out there's a difference between a North American build and an EU build. I'm gonna go kill myself, like that's just. And then you have to redo the whole process, and so, but that was the thing, like, I think, like, for me, like, one of the things that I loved, to answer your question, like, the thing that really helped me a lot about QA is understanding what adversity stands for, because it allowed you to build upon that constantly and challenge yourself and make sure that if a scenario like that happened, you can cover almost every scenario. QA is a tough job. It's arduous. It's the same thing you do the day before you do the next day. It's so different from design, but the same principle was always the same, which is the essence of passion for making video games is still outputting a high quality product.
Yeah.
And that was really like that I carried over until everything I did. So I loved it. I the best times of my life, like when I was in college, was doing QA at WayForward. Even if it was just for 4 months, it was fantastic. So yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I think, I always find that people sometimes get, at least people who don't really know much about the industry, I was told it a lot as a kid. It's like, oh, you get paid money to play games. Like, it's not really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, all people say when you play games.
I was about to say,
what QA actually is, and it's like, Yeah, like with some things, it'd be like, yeah, you need to make this character go into this wall all day, like just to make sure the collision's working and things like that.
Well,
you need to do all this kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah, I'm playing the game, but I'm not really having fun with the
I'm
game.
not playing the game.
I'm like testing the boundaries of it to make it crash.
Yeah, but that's the magic behind it. Like, I think that's what like most people make the mistake of. They think that the location and that the job you have is what's going to make you enjoy the job you have. For me, it's just making a fucking video game. I mean, it doesn't matter what the role is. If you enjoy the game, you're passionate about making games, you don't give a crap about the role. Of course, you can't. There are limitations, of course, especially the more experience you build.
Yeah.
But like, I always say to junior folks or entry level folks, like, just get into a game studio. It doesn't matter what role it is. If you're passionate of what you do, you're not going to give a damn what comes out of it. And I think that is such an important lesson to learn from that.
That is an absolutely fantastic way to put it, because like it goes through like designers like yourself. It's the same thing where you think you want to be a game designer, and then when you get a bit more experience, you're like, actually, I'm going into level design or something like that. Or like you get folks who go into like animator positions or character art positions, and then they're like, actually, I want to do more environment stuff, or I want to actually move into design. I want to actually give them a reason to do that. And I think the only way for you to do that is for you to come to that realization is to be in a studio and be like, no, actually, I want to do what those guys are doing. I want to do what those guys are doing, which is a realization that I came to. I went through the same thing where it was like, yeah, I want to be a game designer. And it's like, no, I want to be a level designer, actually, because I really like guiding the players somewhere. And then I realized it was actually, to me, it was more sort of, I like the reason that they're going there. Oh, that's more narrative design. Maybe I'm more into that. And then realization recently of being like, that's it. That's what I want to focus on.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about making video games, because it's like, like there are so many roles. We are such a new industry. We don't have a definition for the roles, and even the design roles we have, it's constantly evolving. I mean, none of us know what in 5 or 10 years time the roles are going to be. For all I know, there might be a role for character narrative design, holy crap. It sounds funny now, but it's like, it's probably going to happen.
I just think it doesn't even sound that ridiculous now. Like, you're like, I can see exactly how that is. If you've got a game that's so huge in lore, you need people who are specific on character design and lore that comes with that character. There we go. We just made a new position.
Like if you look at so like Arcane, I just watched the No Clip documentary about the making of Prey today, and like I've always known that they've had like architects involved with like Dishonored and that stuff, and they kind of were in this weird in between like level design and environment art. They were like this kind of midriff thing between it. But it seems like that, like when they're talking about what their actual role is in that documentary, it's not what I thought it was at all. And it's like Arcane are the only studio I know of who have that role. But it's like, surely someone like Ubisoft, I'm guessing they're working on Assassin's Creed, if they're recreating all these, these buildings from old civilizations, stuff, like they'll have had to get something like that involved at some point.
Well,
so
they had historians when they were working on
Odyssey. They did. I know Odyssey they did 100%.
Because they had the museum, they had like a whole bit of the game extra content thing that we put so much effort into doing the exact historical representations and all of this. Let's put in like a literal tour. Like you walk around in the level and you click on a statue and it's like, this is the statue from
that's cool.
This old. That is a really cool like extra
well.
thing. So
the best way of putting that is that like, because no two games are the same, no two roles at different studios are the same. They may have the same title, doesn't mean they're the same role at all. And you get that just with more experience.
Go on, Will.
I just wanted to add on top of that. Like that's, I think the like again, like another thing to share to juniors is everyone thinks like, oh, because I'm a level designer, therefore I'm going to be doing the same work that I see everyone else on social media because some blog post told me to do that ever. That is like the definition of how not to be a developer / designer, because your role is going to evolve. What you learned, like even like 5 years ago. I mean, remember when Unity was like at the top of the world of indie development and all that kind of stuff? Now the big thing now is creating your own proprietary editor or going to other forms of software to just be able to make the work you can or cannot do. That itself is like such a big leap going forward, and the way that we think about design, and the amount of books and resources. I mean, I had in my days we had a World of Level Design blog. That was my only reference to level design.
I remember that.
That was
I had that as well.
And when I look at it now, right? Like, and I was looking, I look at it now, and I'm like, good God, man! Like, how far we've gone! Like, holy mother! Like, the pipe. Did you remember the pipe thing that they had about Mirror's Edge or anything? We used that for Knockout City. Fun fact for blocking out. True story.
There you go.
The way the colors worked and everything in the block out process, because we couldn't have art and we could only use primitives to design our stuff because BSPs did not work with ball throwing, so we just used colors for everything, and it was fucking fantastic. And when anyone questioned it, I said, "Here's the blog from World of Level Design," and that's what I showed it to them, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, you're good."
Here's my cited sources.
Well, speaking of Knockout City.
Yeah, great segue there.
Our everlasting ability to get segues going where they don't. Obviously, you did. I think you worked on a number of maps for Knockout City, I believe.
Yep,
but that was. I think that was your first time. Was that your first time professionally doing multiplayer level design?
It was the first time doing level design full stop as a for a game at least.
Awesome.
Okay, so yeah, I guess we can. Would you kind of be able to talk about that kind of transition from your prior experience into what became your role on that? If that's not too much of a vague way.
Oh no, I love telling people this story because I think it was fucking hilarious, because when you see like people online saying, "Oh my god, I got an internship at X studio and they have like 20 level designers for everything," I applied to everywhere. I had like at least 2k. I sent at least 2k or 1.5k worth of emails to all kinds of studios. Got a rejection from every single one of them except one, which was Velen. And Velen were really interested, and another studio in Holland, but I rejected them because the pay was horrific, and I couldn't live off that. So I was a bit scared going to the studio because it was in the middle of upstate New York, and if you've heard of the little city of Troy, New York, if you go on YouTube, the first thing that appeared for me was gang violence and death and destruction, and I was like, why am I? I really want to take this risk?
That exact warning was, I'm pretty sure, at where we went to uni, Adam, at Teesside. I'm pretty sure we had that exact same warning when we lived there.
Just gang violence at Teesside.
Yeah, just gang violence. But I digress.
Yeah, no. It's funny because I also applied to Teesside. But I'm glad that warning was I dodged the bullet, I guess.
It's just wherever you apply, it's just always there.
No comment. But basically, I just remember we were at. I went there and I assumed I would have a whole design team and all the support ever. And I literally said I remember the first thing the project coordinator said to me, "You're the only level designer at the studio. You're the only, EA, we just signed a deal with EA at this point, and you're the reference to everything for this game. Good luck." Shit. So of course we had the previous level designer had worked there and he had left the studio, so he had some resources, but again, we made a totally different game up to this point. We knew the direction we were going to and everything, and I put hairs on my chest, not gonna lie. It was hard because you had to grow up very quickly when you are I cannot explain this enough. It is so different, and I'm grateful for that because I think it saved my ass in so many occasions. I don't have the support of many other when you don't have the support of other level designers that you can bounce off that information. You had to do everything on your own, and I love the challenge, so I did, and the results, people like my levels and the results are there. If they're not, then sorry. I guess I got to learn more, but that's what I do anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, that's class. So you kind of mentioned then you kind of came in very, very very hot. You were doing a lot of different stuff. You didn't have a nice kind of smooth landing, and that kind of onboarding seemed quite deep end, which I know. Yeah, which I know that was kind of very similar to me when I was first starting off. I was you're part of a 3-person design team, all this stuff needs doing, cheers, crack on. It was oh, okay. But so I'm assuming that your title was level designer, but I'm guessing you weren't just doing level design then. I'm guessing you would spinning a lot of plates, so to speak.
Yeah, I primarily did level design. I did contribute to some game modes and all that kind of stuff, and the core philosophy, and helped improve the pipeline as much as I could and everything. Yeah, it was the thing that I think what made you grow up very quickly. I think in this game was like no one had ever made a dodgeball action game, and no one, and I mean no one, had ever made a game like ours. And we had to throw every level design principle you can think of out of the fucking window, because that was the thing. Like, one moment there's a bit of me that's like, I'm worried that I might become like a niche as a level designer, and then there's the other half of me that's like, that might be a good thing. Like that's going to make me understand, and it made me understand how important it is to be adaptable as a level designer.
Yeah, you get that super unique experience from a Zific, and then you can apply that to like everything else because it's so niche.
Yep. And that was there was that. Of course, I built the level the level mechanics with the legend that is Christopher Mercado, and we worked really well together. And at least I think I did with him. I ask him, but I think we had a good time. It was a Knockout City was a fun game to work on, guys. I can't I still remember like there was a phase early on where I spent like a month, and they said just make any level you want. I was like, really? No themes? Yeah, do whatever you want. No mechanics or anything. I was like, cool. And I made an aquarium level, and I loved it. Like, it's just like that's what we could do, and we were throwing dodgeballs around aquariums, and that's the beauty. The game just sold itself so early on. I remember I wasn't a fan at the very beginning of the game, like another story entirely. But after a while, I realized what made the game great, and that really helped me.
Yeah, because go on, Matt. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say that me and Jack have been super into like sort of very weird sports games, and Adam as well, where it's like you take this concept and then you just make it as much fun as it can possibly be. It doesn't matter how wacky as long as it's still got the essence of the sport.
Yeah.
You just make that go as crazy as possible, and it's still got like in Knockout City, it's crazy, and the visuals are really good, and it's that kind of like not kiddie, but Disney, Nintendo style that they have, and
it's very playful.
Playful is the best definition for it. But it's still like ultra competitive. Like I remember when me and Adam were playing it, and we were just getting our asses kicked like the whole time. Did like one game online, and we were like, "Oh yeah, we're the best ever." And then two games later, we're just losing every single one. I'm like, "Oh god, this
I brought me in the team. Then you would have won everything."
There we go.
They made fun of me. I was not a good player.
It must be people who are completely like insane at that game as well, like who have just put so many hours into it that they're just so good at it. And you're like, how on earth do you find time to do this? Developers might not be that skilled at it.
Because when it was in beta, I remember we tried all the time, me and Willem, to grab some time to play it together, but it was right when I was bloody working remote with my laptop, so I was like up and down the bloody country with it. But I remember playing it in. Did it have an alpha and beta, or was it just two betas? I think
it was two betas. Yeah, we two betas,
And I remember playing it, being like, "Can't wait to play this. I'm down for like a big arcadey sports game, dodgeball, cool." And I remember playing it and getting to the point, I was like, I feel great at this game. Kind of what you were saying, Matt. And then it came out at launch. I played it a bit at launch, right? Was playing other stuff. Came back to it about 2 weeks after. I could not get a bloody knockout. The skill level within 2 weeks in that game was insane. And it was like, I think it's got so much depth to a game, which I think face value, you look at it and be like, I don't think it would be this competitive, but it's really, really rich with its like base set of mechanics that it has to offer.
Yeah, like our philosophy for designing levels for the game in general, the core philosophy that Jeremy Russo, who was the game director, was that this game had to be very watchable. So we would I remember we would get the best players in the office, and it would be like a proper sports event. We even had our own teams, like, and we would watch like on a big projector the finals, and it felt like watching a sports event. And that was the whole principle. Like, I think someone at EA, I do not want to quote this person, but like I will, but I won't say their name. But like he had made a very brilliant statement about Knockout City, which is, I think Knockout City is the the first video game where it genuinely felt like a sport. It's all about reaction, and it's all about like it's something you either got or you don't. And like when you look at like Rocket League, which is also a very well balanced game, but it's also very unpredictable. You don't really have control of the scenarios and everything. Knockout City, you control everything, and that's what makes it fun. Like when you play. Oh, I'm gonna get berated for this, but like when you play soccer, in a field. Hey, I'm football man. When you play soccer on a field, footy better. I'll do footy.
Thank you.
When you go play footy on a field,
that's somehow worse.
Even if you're crap at the game at playing the sport, you at least can have fun. Kicking a ball. Kicking a ball feels good. Same with throwing and catching a ball in Knockout City, and that was the whole point. And there was psychology and math we put into literally everything. Like, for instance, for a long time to do lob throws, we used the right stick to throw up. But we got rid of that. Why? Because it felt too unnatural for a new player to get in there. So what did we do? We changed all the mappings of because we used an Xbox controller like this, like we just changed it to all kinds of different buttons and saw like which one felt the most like if you got like your grandma in Nebraska to play it, like which one of those did it actually feel right? And we would watch I would spend like watching a play test, and I would look at someone's hands, looking at like how they were playing and how they were using that button in a way that felt natural. And by the way, I make the joke that I overanalyze, but in this case, I had to overanalyze because that was the type of game we were making. We were making an esports competitive game for everyone. So when I hear that, I'm like, it doesn't surprise me. At the same time, that first initial retention of it feeling good to even lose and win, that came from like how natural the game felt, regardless of the maps that came from it.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think you can feel all of that in the game. Like you really can. Like I think I remember, I think it was when I was at yours that time, Matt and Adam. I think it was the beta, and I was playing it on my laptop, and I was like, "You're like, oh my god, this looks sick!" I'm like, "Give it a go." It's like the feel of the game and everything. It's so on point. It's absolutely.
Well, that's what I was saying. We were playing it in the beta, and I was like, "Oh, this feels so good!" Like like you said, doing all of the different moves and everything, and then I had the same experience as you in the beta. I'm like, oh man, I'm so good at video games. And then like I pick it up like a week after it's come out, and I'm like, oh, I'm never playing this game again.
Yeah,
it's not even that. I think a lot of the time as well, like just in the lobby, I think me and one of my mates, I think Stu, we just spent hours just throwing and catching. Do you know? Because it like exponentially just speeds up. We just kept throwing it to like just anything that game feels fucking mint.
Yeah, it does. It feels absolute top. Yeah, but I guess
sorry, go for it.
No, go.
No.
I was about to say, like, in like terms of like your actual role as level designer on it, like once the kind of rough you were mentioning before, like you were kind of the whole thing with when you're making something that's unproven, right, and it's new IP, you've got the thing of right, we need to nail down everything the player can do before doing any meaningful level design, because as soon as this thing changes, all that stuff is just useless and broken now. So what was the process like with that? Like, how long are we talking did it take for like the 3 Cs of that game to be like, we're here now? And you mentioned even like the stuff of changing inputs and how that influenced, like you had like the lob pass, right? And you did like Y on the controller, and that would change. I think it did like a spin, and that would change the way you threw the ball.
Would be,
yeah, but that would also act as your like double jump as well as you could. That's how you change your stuff.
Same
so
with
like,
Y,
yeah. So how long was it before all that came online, and did that influence the change level design and stuff?
No, that's actually a very interesting thing. Our 3 Cs, the basis of the 3 Cs were actually defined by that point, but we wanted to evolve it. Like that was the great thing about Merck, our technical designer. He always, with Jeremy, wanted to evolve the gameplay. He knew that that was in the end of the day that was so important, and especially in a multiplayer game, you have to stick on your laurels, but you also have to look at we have this opportunity always to really smoothen out and iron out the wrinkles from the gameplay. One of I would say like early on, like the basis for most of our level design was as long as we had like a unit structure, as long as you had these 2 units, as long as you You had border warnings when there were pits, as long as the map complemented the hook of the mechanic. That was the important part of designing it. So we could, from the beginning, but we spent a lot of time early on trying to understand, and that was important to me, to understand what felt shit about playing the game.
Yeah.
Great example was, if you put a roof on top of the map, you'd be surprised how many people don't want to go underneath things, and at the same time also how people overutilize that in Knockout City. And even if, like, that was the thing that I always say, like, what I love about what I do as a job, it's like, even if you increase it like a ramp size by like 1 unit up, how all of a sudden it feels like you were blindsided by another player. And that was a feel bad. And we were like, no, we want to get rid of this shit. So we had like an angle system, like, and we would use a metric from our traversal room to do that. And that was so, like, it was such a beautiful feeling when, like, you people will say, oh, this is too high, and you dropped it by 1 unit. It's like, oh, now it's perfect. And it's like, welcome to my job. Like, it's differences make such a big philosophical change. And so, but that evolved. Like, even then, like, like Rooftop Rumble, which was the first map I worked on. It's your vanilla level for Knockout City. I mean, everything
I think it's like the quintessential map, though. I'd probably argue that might just because it was my first one I played, but I think to me it's you get it doesn't have like there's like some maps that had like a very like specific way of traversing, like the tubes and stuff. But I think that one it's got like the updrifts and things like that. But I think for the most part, it almost, like you said, like that kind of default, like no holds barred, like this is Knockout City as it kind of comes.
This is Knockout City as it is, yeah. I mean, and in many ways, like, there are things we could have done better. We should have added more verticality, 100%. But I was okay with that. Like, I don't mind if it's a bit like 2 for it. I think as long as the play experience was enjoyable, as long as you got the most out of it, and as long as the game, like, we didn't take the players out of the game and the players started focusing more on the level. That was the key to making Rooftop Rumble great. I made a whole blog about it. Like, it was a word that really just sort of changed the whole philosophy on the map. But this was such a key, crucial point to making a great Knockout City level. But I would 100%, like, going on what you were saying, Jack. Like, like as the game evolved, like, there were things that we definitely could have done better with that map. Like, we had this prism-shaped glass thing that was on the left, and we had a flank route all the way on the left, which I think was kind of crap and useless. But, like, I'm okay admitting that, because it was like, I know as a level designer I can always do that better. And we also learned a little small thing. Like, we started learning what felt bad about a pit. Like, if you have a pit falling off and then there's geo below it.
Yeah.
Like, I did a really stupid thing where I noticed players. I got the same feedback where people hated going backwards from the blue VIP section down to this pit all the way to that flank route. People hated that dropping down there, because, like, I don't know if there's something dropping down there, and the whole map has only drop off, so I need this to be clear. So for a month I was like, do I increase it up? Do I do anything?
Yeah.
The solution was put a fucking flag. I put a pole, like a green pole or orange pole on the back. Oh, it's perfect all of a sudden. Like, that was all stuff. And then we learned afterwards, if you're going to do a pit, 1, you need to show the geo leading out of that. And 2, if you're not, put something to present it, like as a statue, even if it's like a cord with a different color.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So something else I wanted to talk about was, obviously, designers, we are the main, kind of like stakeholders of, a piece of content, whether it's mechanic, level, whatever. So do you have any? Because I think you've made quite a cool lot of tips almost for like juniors, kind of what you've been talking so far. Like, do you think there's some kind of cool things you've learned from, not necessarily on Knockout City, but mainly because I think it was obviously a good like 101 of level design for you. Like good like tips or bits of knowledge of like what's like a good working relationship when you're liaisoning with, whether it's environment art or code, animation, things like that.
It's like being with a partner. It's all about compromise. I mean, you got to compromise everything. There's a lot of things we want to do in life, like some people want to become game directors for the next BioShock and all that kind of stuff. But, like, there's other folks who simply can't do that. Yeah, I know, Jack. I called you about the job. I heard, it's actually the Lighthouse sequel. But
oh god, don't tell him that. Oh
no. It's a good job I've got skinny jeans on, otherwise his tattoo would be popping out.
And that's when Jack took it personally. So anyway, but I would say the biggest thing, I was always a very stubborn mule when it came to the way I did things. I always hated getting feedback and all that kind of stuff. My personal way and the most important thing about working with another team: compromise, and lean on that like there's no tomorrow. There are going to be moments where, you have to stand up for your values and metrics, and we did that a lot. But I think if you ask that level art team, why, because we worked so well with that level art team together, run by a lot of great folks. If you ask them what made it work, was that we loved making games and we were willing to compromise because we knew we can adapt to anything, and that was fantastic. And they knew that, hey, geo wise we couldn't change anything, but when it came to the POIs and everything and how they shaped, they were willing to work around what we would tell them. I mean, I still remember I would walk through the metrics and they loved that. The lead artist absolutely adored that when it came to going through that. It was like, yes, this is great because now I know exactly what I can't do and I can build around that. And that is compromise, and vice versa. When we were building narrative for levels, they're like, listen, we need you to take this into account, guys, because we still need to art up your stuff. Like, if you just put a computer in in the middle of a map, in a place where there's no computers whatsoever, fuck you, you need to you have to build that bridgeway. And that's always my biggest advice, whether you're junior or senior, because there's a lot of people who think they're rock stars because they're good at what they do and they're the expert in where they're, and we are in some aspects, we are experts at what we do, but we also have to trust the process, and that's very important.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying before about when you first joined and you were told that you would be the reference for the game itself. And I think that really ties into what design is and what we do, is that we are the reference point for everything else, providing that context. And I think when you talked about the narrative purposes for the environment art, it's just a pure example of that as well. People will come to the other disciplines, might come to you, or you might go to them, to give them reasons as to why you have to design it this way or they have to make the art this way. So I think that's...
Yeah, exactly. I would say, if for context, level design wise, I was sort of the point of info. Game design wise was always Merc. He was our reference. But yeah, 100%. That was the thing. And going back to the first question asked about working on Knockout, I mean, I think I'm blessed in many ways that I was thrown at the deep end, because it makes you grow up quickly, I mean, and also it's funny, if you meet most senior people from the early 2000s who worked in design, they'll say, well, get used to it. That was what it was like in the past. Most days, I think we take a lot of things for granted, and that's what I loved about it, because it felt like old school 80s, 90s development, and that's cool. I was like, oh yeah, great,
When my tutors in uni were like, oh yeah, you'll learn as much in the first 2 weeks in industry as you will in the 3 years on course. That was so true, because I got we had some big teams on Man of the Dam when I was on that, but that was you just jump in and here's a load of stuff, you go sort that out, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I'll do that. You learn so much by just being put in that mode, and where you have to I got to get it done, otherwise it's not going to get done, and you're the guy to do it, so
and it's a joy, isn't it, when you nail that, and it's you get that part right, and it's just the best feeling. It's my favorite feeling in the world. It's my favorite. I was going to say, it's the best feeling in the world when you walk into the office and you wake up in the morning, you realize, fuck, I work as a game developer in a game studio. That's what gets me up in the morning,
Yeah, that is perfect. And on the other side of that, I guess it's when things release and you see all of the fruits of the labor from every single person on that team, and when you see it all come together, that is something, that is a feeling that you will not forget. And you see people actually enjoy the product that you've brought out.
I mean, that's such a big... Oh, you go, Jack.
I was just about to say, I think it's... I can't remember. I saw something recently. Either someone was asking someone about game design or something. Maybe someone from the film industry to games, or maybe even TV or something. And they were saying how hard it must be for developers in games to sit there for at the time it used to be like 2.5 years, 3 years. We're looking more for these big crazy games now, like 5 years now for some games.
Even 6 years. Start,
and even 6 years. Like you don't get to show anything you're doing for like half a decade. Sat there being like...
Look at Cyberpunk. 2011, 2010, they started developing that game.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And it's like there's people who like they didn't have kids at the start of that. At the end of it, they had kids who were like 9-10 years old. And it's just crazy. You sat on this thing for so long, and when you finally have it, it's almost like this cathartic feeling of like, it's out there now. Like you almost don't even care if it's good or bad. It's just it's out there. Cool.
And then you get that 2
thing
weeks.
that you
I think that's 2 weeks of like, oh, done. I finished it. All right, on to the next one. See you in 2 years, 3 years.
On to the next one. Yeah. I think that's the thing that you were saying, Willem, is that the point that gets you through that and to that end point is just the sheer joy of what you're actually doing day to day. Because at the end of the day, it is a job. You show up and you have off days and you have bad days and you have good days. But when those days where you go in, you're like, wow, I'm actually making something that's really cool. And working with an amazing team for it, that's what gets you through it. It's a fantastic feeling.
I remember like early on, like, when I was thinking about like, like I worked at, when you're living in upstate and, it's a cold, derelict part of the world. I mean, still great. I mean, still don't forget it's a first world country, and not like you're in the, but it's, it's a bit, it's a bit distant. And I just remember you go to the streets of Troy, and I would walk past, and there would be a homeless guy on the side and everything. And then you go into the office, and then you realize in front of you, you've got a guy who used to work at Nintendo. You've got another guy who used to work on the first 2 Uncharted games and on Halo 4. And then you got another person over, and then you realize, can you imagine telling your kids, or even like telling yourself as a 10-year-old, holy shit. Like one of my best friends is a guy called Corey Hamilton. And he told me he worked on the Lemony Snicket's game from the 2000s. And I was like, I played that game, and I got angry at him. I was like, because I hate it. Like, I remember making jokes about it. I was like, what happened? He was like, yeah, well, that's and this, and it's so cool, and it's such a big part of what I love about the industry. But I also don't get carried away. It's great that you've done what you've done, but for me personally, I don't know if it's the sports side of me coming. I'm not interested as much anymore what I did in the past. I want Star Wars Hunters that I'm working on right now to be the best fucking game I've ever created, and I want it to be the best game in the world. And that's maybe my competitive edge, but that's about it.
I think that's always the way it's going to be, and I think that's just like the beautiful part of the games industry. It's like you said, I came in and then I was speaking to one of my my execs, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I worked on Quidditch World Cup," and I was like, "What? I played so much in that game." Because it's such a small industry and it's been such a while. But I think that is the great thing about the games industry is it's so small, and all these people, and I guess it's an easy surmise, but we get to make games for a living. That's just really cool.
It feels like a weird version of like, that scene in Jaws when they're all like comparing like the scars and they're all got the legs on the table and they're all going through. Feels like a weird version of that. And you talk to people, and everyone starts going through like, "Oh, did you? Well, I worked on this. Like, did you? Like, oh, I." And you do have these little moments.
You should have seen the development on this.
Yeah, like it's like cool, like. I'm hesitant to call them war stories. That makes them sound really cool. But you know what I mean? They are these little moments when you kind of pull it together. And even if you worked in a game that, it wasn't the most amazing thing in the world, but you had a great time working on it.
You got to tell that story. At least you could go tell that story. Can you imagine like someone at a bank telling you, "Oh, I saw a guy, do this and that." I'm like, great. I had to try and imagine like you're working on Saints Row, having to explain that you mistextured the like an inappropriate costume or something like that. Having to explain that. That's funny. Like that's something worth telling. It's an anecdote. It's the Jeremy Clarkson anecdote. But anyway,
it's amazing. I mean, and that is just the small little anecdotes and stories you get from the games industry is so good. And I think because that is such a positive message to end on the games industry, I think I'm going to tail us out there as we're coming up to time. So thank you very much for being here, Willem. It's been an amazing chat, and we have been Rules of Play, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yes, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Bye bye. Cheers, Willie.